Thank you all, everyone. And good morning. And thank you for all the work everyone here does, for your friendship, I thank you for that.
I thank you. I thank you for being here. Let me begin with the tenuous ceasefire. The war is no longer contained. It's become a regional war in terms of Iran. And we get mixed signals from the president, which is not strange to me, that one day we're going to stop, one day we're going to start, one day it's not a war, one day it is. And on Easter Sunday, using all kind of profanity, religion or mocking it. I mean, from the first strikes, you have been about your opposition to this war and to this engagement. And as you see it now, explain to me why there's such a danger on a global level, which I believe was the basis that you had opposed this engagement from the beginning and had said that. And it seems like, not that you wanted to be right, that you have been right, because we're losing lives on all sides and we don't even know why.
That's right. Well, you are correct, Rev. From the beginning, I have been unequivocally opposed to this war of choice that Trump has entered. Let us understand, first of all, this president is the first president of the United States since World War II who does not believe in the alliances that we have with friendly nations, does not believe in the strengthenship, bears on our standing around the world, our influence around the world, not to mention our national security. This is the first president of the United States post-World War II who has not considered the United States of America to have a responsibility to be a standard bearer around international rules and norms, such as sovereignty and territorial integrity. Look what he did as it relates, and what he has been doing as it relates to Ukraine. And why is this important? Because America's strength in the context of the globe and the world relies on a number of things. Yes, it relies on the fact that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world, our military, and it relies on what we call our soft power, which is the importance that we have placed in being a participant with other democracies around holding up international rules and the importance of respecting relationships. Foreign policy is a lot like your friendships in your personal life. The strength of the friendship is going to be based on some mutual recognition of the history of the friendship, what you've been through together. It's going to rely on trust, which is a reciprocal relationship. You give and you receive trust. It's a back and forth. Friendships rely on consistency. Do I follow through on what I say? What I've said? Well, none of this can be counted on when it comes to Donald Trump. None of it. It is, yes, evidence of his lack of character, but it is harmful to the people of America, not to mention people in allied nations around the world. So he enters into this war, a war of choice. Remember, the man said, right? So understand what that is. Those are friends of ours that we have had, and that bond formed out of what happened in the 1930s. World War II. Under our administration, we extended NATO. We brought 2 more countries in. He's now pointing fingers at the friends of ours who don't want to go along with his war of choice. And two things in particular, which keeps me up at night, Frank, as your former Vice President of the United States. And it is this, and maybe try to do better. We have become more unreliable, but it's going to take a while and some serious work, way beyond the end of this man's term, to regain whatever we had. I will tell you, Rev, though, what 50 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings, many of them multiple times, and formed relationships. I have traveled the globe many times over. Friends here. One thing that I realized is that the relationship that we have with allied nations, and reinforced by the leaders, but I will tell you, the true strength of those relationships is the people of those nations feeling some level of identity and connection with the people of our country. And that includes the people in this room. Home as Vice President was then Chancellor, German Chancellor Angela Merkel. I had her over for breakfast, and in China and a number of things. And then she leaned over to me and she said, "Please tell me what's going on in your country with voting." Because she was very concerned about the erosion that she was reading about and hearing about in the United States around obstruction of voting rights. I bring it back to Nan because here's the point there. She was fully aware of the leaders and the activists and the heroes that we honor who fought for voting rights. She knew of the struggle. She knew of the work it requires, and she knew what was at stake. And I will tell the folks here that, again, for the ideals of America, always fighting for what we know to be true commitment to freedom, to justice, to liberty, and to equality. So there we go.
Now, let me ask you this, and I'm sure you remember, many out there remember, President Trump said on day one he was going to deal with inflation and make America affordable again, and to bring down the prices of groceries. It's safe to say these things didn't happen. So, I mean, what do you make of this? I know you know I'm the preacher, but you practice better than me. I'd be up in the middle of the night saying, "I told you so," but how do you, on a serious side, deal with the fact that we are dealing at a time this war exacerbates it, what's going on with the Straits of Hormuz all exacerbates it, and we're paying for this. This is not just some foreign affair issue somewhere else.
That's right.
The American citizens, black, white, red, blue, don't matter, are paying for this war.
And the American citizens will always pay for. Friends in the room say, he lied. He lied. He told the American people on day one he was going to bring down prices and costs. And he lied. I did not vote. And I do believe there is a healthy number of the folks that voted for him that believed him and voted based on that very important issue, which is, can they afford to get through life with dignity and being able to take care of their family? It's without any question, I would say the number, instead of taking care of the average everyday folk in America around their need for affordability, he'd been taking care of his rich friends and his own family. You look at what's been happening, the cost of gas, the cost of food, he has, he said what he's thinking. I mean, here's the thing. We don't have to kind of like, what does he mean when he says that? That's the one problem we don't have. So, he just said the other day, the government shouldn't be responsible for affordable child care.
He said.
This is the same man who pretended that he's a family first president. They're asking for at least $200 billion. I heard say the number may be as high as $400 billion, $200 to $400 billion for this war. Meanwhile, they've cut Medicaid. His character is, he is telling the American people he doesn't care about you. But I would caution us to understand it's not only about him. At some point, he will be termed out of office. And understand, it's not just about the individual, it's about the apparatus, if you will. I would prefer to just talk about the cronies who are allowing this to happen. Members of Congress, Rev, I'm going to use the F word, who are feckless. It's an appropriate F word. Who don't, and I served, as you mentioned, Rev, in the United States Senate for 4 years. I know a number of these folks. And I know that so many of them know what's wrong with this. I know they know it. But they don't have the courage to stand up. They want to walk around with their flag pin, having their staff run around and chase them like they're royalty. They don't want to give up those jobs. And they know it's wrong. The other thing I've come to, you know, I know we're all spending a lot of time thinking about how could people be this way. I've come to the realization that, you know, some people are purely transactional. By that, I mean they're in it for what they can get out of it, and whoever is harmed in the process, so be it. They're not burdened with doing what is morally right, what is principled, what is value-based. They're in it for what they can get out of it. And the second point I've come to realize, sadly, is that I do think it is part of the frailty of human nature for some, which is the need to just be next to power, no matter what it does. And these are the things that we're seeing come from people who are otherwise powerful and have taken an oath to represent the people in their best interest. So this is what we're seeing happen. I think we need to be, you know, we need to understand it's bigger than him. We have midterms coming up. And anyone who is facilitating this, either by their silence or actively, needs to be held accountable.
One of the things you said that I want to go back to quickly is the standing in the international community that has been severely damaged by this president. And how can that even be restored? It's going to take years. He's broken commitments, promises. He's in many ways excoriated some of the allies. Yeah. How do you rebuild a global kind of image of where the United States was that he's torn up in a year and a half?
You're right. One, we're going to have to, it's going to take, I think it's going to take more than one election to do. Okay.
Now, y'all know I don't allow disruptions at my convention. Y'all know how quiet and laid back I am. What do y'all think, y'all?
So I'll say this back to your question right now. And I thank everybody here. You know, it will be about what it's going to take to repair and revive relationships. But there's another piece to this that's equally problematic, which is, you know that saying, nature abhors a vacuum, right? I mean, back to the point about relationships. The other thing about relationships we know in our personal life, you have to be present. You have to be there. So the other thing the man has done is he cut USAID, which was a commitment that we made and funded over many years that the United States of America, we still didn't fund it enough, by the way, but we did fund it, aid that we would give to nations in need, whether it be because they were dealing with a health epidemic. You know, for years it was HIV, AIDS, cholera, hunger, and through USAID, we would give aid and assistance to nations in need. And by the way, that was not pure benevolence. There was also an understanding when you do that, you earn the credibility to then talk about some other things. Right. So it's not like it's purely selfless to do it. It's not like, you know, what they would have you say, oh, American tax dollars shouldn't be going to this. America benefits from that. Our national security benefits from it, if you want to understand, right? There's multiple purposes. Well, he cut that. So we're not giving that level of aid. But the other thing, nature abhors a vacuum. When you are not present in these relationships, other people will fill the void. So see China. I mean, somebody asked me what's your on China's connection and all this, and I jokingly, half jokingly, said, well, China's sitting back in the popcorn. But what they're also doing, when I was vice president, I was very intentional, and one of the things I'm very proud of is I was doing the work of attempting to change the narrative around the relationship between the United States of America and the continent of Africa. Because we have historically, we have worked on the relationship, it's been about aid, but my point was it needs to be about partnership, right? I understand that on the continent, the median age, I think I was about 19 years old. The prediction is that by the year 2050, 1 in 4 people, because you know, the way that he's thinking of foreign policy, it seems, is when he talks about America first, it's to withdraw from these relationships and these connections. And then he kind of acts like a mob boss. So then he's kind of like, well, you know, you take Eastern Europe, and I'll take the Western Hemisphere. And then you over there, you get Asia. And we'll just divide it up, right? Instead of understanding historically, America has always been about our global leadership, imperfect though we have been. So what is happening is by withdrawing for a number of reasons, not to mention what he has called African nations.
Yeah. S-hole countries.
Right. What is happening is the other thing that is going to require the work after he leaves office is understanding that people have filled our void, in particular China. And how's that going to work then when, again, relationships are based on who's been with me, who's been here? I'll give you another example, and then we can go on to the next question. When I was vice president, I spent a lot of time focused on the Indo-Pacific. So again, you got to be present. So I spent time and traveled to Vietnam, to Singapore, to South Korea, to Indonesia, to Japan. Why did I go to those places and have multiple meetings with those leaders? Because China is attempting to influence. That whole region of the world which we have a direct connection to. California is right Pacific, right? 40 million people. We have a direct interest in what happens in that region, so we need to be present. You look under the Trump administration, they have pretty much withdrawn from our relationships with Indo-Pacific countries, again leaving a void. So while he struts around boasting about how he will annihilate a whole people, what he is in fact doing, and this is why it's important to watch what he does and not just listen to what he says. What he is doing is making us weaker, unreliable, and less influential.
There's an inordinate amount of influence that social media has,
Yeah.
both good and bad.
Right.
And so much to a degree that Australia just banned social media. Do you think government should regulate social media?
So I actually was in Australia in the last 12 months twice and met with the commissioner who championed their this restriction for social media for children 16 and under. It's interesting. She says she preferred to not call it a ban, but a delay. So this is how she thinks of it. It's a delay on when children can have access to social media. And it's relatively new, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, here's the thing. We should trust parents, understand that parents are right to be concerned about their children's, the amount of time their children are spending on social media and the impact it's having on their mental health. It's real, Brad. It's real. And over 30 states now in the United States have, for example, banned cell phones in schools and are seeing very positive outcomes for that. And I think that is something that we are seeing, that increasingly we're seeing that whatever the drawback, the benefit outweighs the drawback. But the work that has to be done is understanding that also we've got to have guardrails on what big tech is doing. And whether it be social media or what's happening with AI. Back to the social media piece, I was actually very pleased to see that of the advocates for guardrails on social media were all these parents who just won that case against Meta and YouTube around the harm to children, so many of whom have actually died by suicide. You look at, and when we talk about suicide rates among children, and then you look at the suicide rates among Black children, we cannot ignore the reality of how, among the many factors that impact the mental health and well-being of our children, this is one of them. And the additional point I would make is, if we're sitting around waiting for governments to handle this, we may be sitting around for a long time. And I will say, though, states are taking it on, like New York has done some interesting work, California has done some interesting work. So governments can, but again, this administration, through Trump, has basically said it's either federal legislation or nothing, but there's going to be no federal legislation because half his cabinet are invested in the technology and are in the pocket of big tech. So where we would like to know and believe that government traditionally has a role to play in reducing harm, we're seeing it with some state governments. I don't know if we're going to see it with the federal government anytime soon. Then you could say, well, then where else could the protections come from? Well, it's not going to come from the industry itself, because the industry has already figured out a business model where the algorithm is fueled by fear. And fear fuels the algorithm, and the algorithm fuels profit. So that's going to be difficult to expect that they will self-police, because they pretty much said that they're not going to. So then who's left? This is where I say the consumer. who, as we know, when we know our market power, our ability to have an impact on the marketplace, we can actually create movements that are about progress. And part of that will be, and I say this to Nan, is the work that we will continue to do to educate the people, the public, our friends and neighbors, the folks where we organize, to help them understand the effects of social media so that they will know what to demand of the market.
One of the things that Nan has been on the forefront of, and that you've been there longer than most, is voting rights and the protection of voting rights.
Yeah.
I am honored to have in one of our offices a picture of us marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and you were helping to wheel one of the foot soldiers. And I and Ben Crump was with you. But you've been to Selma before you were running for president. Voting rights is at risk with the whole way he is now trying to change the qualifications for voting, passports, which is the poll tax, because if you don't have a passport, you need almost $200 to get one. Redistricting. Talk to us as one who dealt with, in the Senate, again, I go by the record, the John Lewis Justice Act in terms of Voting Rights Act, and you tried to get it passed. I remember that there was the meetings, and they had three of you to meet and be the committee to get it through, and the last minute, the Republican who loved Donald Trump, hugged him by the waist, turned to us. You called me and said, Rev, I try my best, but I think we're losing our ally. You championed that about voting rights. Talk about that.
Yeah. So to your point about poll taxes, literacy taxes, this is not new in our history. And it's an agenda that has been in play since we got voting rights. And to fast forward to today, yes, it's more of the same. And so the way it is taking on is first they're pushing redistricting. First, remember, they were pushing redistricting in red states. And then blue states said, all right, well, we're going to play fire with fire then. Okay? So that was right. They have been doing the work for years of building a Supreme Court that is configured as we now have it. And they're about to make a decision on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And I am sad to say, I do believe they are going to kill it. And that will mean that the legal tool that we have to be able to litigate in a court what are clearly racist, influenced laws to prevent certain people from voting, we're going to lose the tool that we have had before. They then are proposing the SAVE Act. One must ask, save who? And what they will do is basically, to your point, Rev, to register to vote, you're going to have to prove your citizenship by a passport or a birth certificate. So it's estimated that over 2 million Americans don't have a passport or access to a passport. And to get one is at least $100, if not close to $200, which is it's essence a poll tax, right? On the birth certificate piece, well, if you are a woman who got married and took your spouse's name, you are among the over 60 million women in and around mail-in voting. Well, guess who, when he's hanging out at his resort spa at Mar-a-Lago, votes by mail? So not only is the intent to obstruct clear, the hypocrisy again as always, abounds. Here's what I'd say. First of all, as part of our activism and our work, we're going to have to register folks to vote as we always do. But I start with this. Ask folks to make sure that they check right now their voter status. Don't wait until election day to see if, for example, your name got purged from the rolls. Ask today for folks to check on their polling location, because part of what this shell game they've been playing includes closing to be transactional voters.
I know we are over the time, but I need to ask you this. There was, slow down. I promise this is a certain time. I'm going to come again. This is the convention revival. It was debated in your campaign in 7 days that whether you should talk to people like Joe Rogan and hard right-wing people in media. If you would run again, would you talk to them?
Yes, I would. Listen, I will talk with anyone if it means. Okay,
I tried to be subtle, but I just figured I'd go right
well,
at it.
that's as subtle as Reverend Al Sharpton could ever be. For many things, but not being subtle. Listen, I might. I'm thinking about it. But let me say this. I am thinking about it. But let me also say this. Look, I served for 4 years being a heartbeat away from the presidency of the United States. I spent countless hours in my West Wing office, footsteps away from the Oval Office. I spent countless hours in the Oval Office in the situation room. I know what the job is, and I know what it requires. I also know, one of the things I've been doing, as you know, I've been traveling the country the last year, spent a lot of time in the South and many other places. And the one thing I'm really clear about also is the status quo is not working, and hasn't been working for a lot of people for a long time. And part of the issue is the need to get rid of some of the bureaucracy in government, and to understand that the people they don't want process, they want progress. And that's the work that needs to be done. I think that, look, the American people have a right to expect that anyone who wants to run for office and be a leader, that it can't be about themselves. And what they want for themselves has got to be about the American people.